Commander Jack Reynolds was pretty sure he'd screwed up. Again. The 7-foot-tall, azure-skinned Praxian ambassador was still speaking, its three-part mandible clacking in what Jack recognized as extreme distress. The problem was, Jack had just yawned. Not intentionally, of course. He was operating on 3 hours of sleep after the overnight transit from Earth, but in Praxian culture, exposing one's uvula was apparently the equivalent of flashing obscene hand gestures while insulting someone's entire ancestral line. As Earth's representative, your behavior is catalogued as Diplomatic Incident 47 this standard month, buzzed the translator pinned to Ambassador Glix's formal robe. The Galactic Council questions humanity's readiness for interstellar relations. Jack ran a hand through his disheveled brown hair. Look, I genuinely apologize. On Earth, a yawn just means I'm tired. It's involuntary. Like whatever that thing your left eye stalk does when you're annoyed. The eye stalk in question immediately froze mid-twitch. See? That thing. Glix's color deepened to indigo, the Praxian equivalent of an embarrassed blush. The council chamber's gallery erupted in murmurs from 24 species of observers. Council Overseer Clax Thorn, a being comprised of what appeared to be sentient crystal formations with a perpetually judgmental aura, chimed in with a resonant voice. The human demonstrates, yet again, their species' alarming inability to control their biological functions, noted for the records. Jack suppressed another yawn barely. 6 months since humanity had made first contact, and Earth's diplomatic corps was still setting records for interspecies faux pas. It wasn't entirely their fault. The Galactic Council had existed for over 10 millennia, developing protocols so Byzantine that species were typically observed for centuries before invitation. Earth had been fast-tracked only because humans had accidentally intercepted and responded to a Council probe's test signal, forcing their hand. The Council believed humans warranted immediate quarantine. Clax Thorn continued, crystals tinkling disapprovingly. Your species classified as Category 7B, primitive with dangerous potential. Jack knew this classification well. It primarily existed because humans had somehow evolved on a Class 5 death world. Earth's seemingly pleasant environment was apparently considered hilariously lethal by galactic standards. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, toxic oxygen levels, and terrifying megafauna made most council species shudder at the mere thought of visiting. Overseer Clax Thorn, Jack said, attempting diplomacy. Humans are eager to learn proper protocols. We've only had access to the Council's 700,000-page introductory guidelines for half a year. Most species require decades to absorb the preliminary guidelines, sniffed a gelatinous being to Jack's right. We're quick learners, Jack offered with what he hoped was a winning smile. Several species recoiled, apparently interpreting the display of teeth as aggression. Clax Thorn's crystals clinked together in what the translation matrix identified as a sigh. Commander Reynolds, as Earth's newly appointed representative, you will attend tomorrow's emergency council session regarding the Dorsian trade dispute. Try not to cause an interstellar incident before then. Jack nodded soberly, thinking that not causing incidents might be beyond his capabilities. As the assembly dispersed, he wondered for the 1,000th time why Earth's united planetary government had thought a former Space Force pilot with a penchant for improvisation was qualified for this job. The answer, as always, was simple. No one else wanted it. The Galactic Council headquarters resembled what might happen if you asked an octopus to design a crystal palace while high on geometry. Impossible angles, gravity-defying spires, and corridors that seemed to loop back on themselves in ways that made Jack's inner ear protest. He'd arrived an hour early for the emergency council session, hoping to avoid another diplomatic catastrophe through proper preparation. You look like you just licked a power coupling, said a voice behind him. Jack turned to find diplomat Lexi Orion leaning against a wall that pulsed with soft blue light. At 53, Lexi was Earth's most seasoned space diplomat, which meant she'd been doing this for all of 8 months compared to his 3. Her silver-streaked black hair was pulled back in a no-nonsense knot, and her expression suggested she found the entire Galactic Council situation darkly amusing. They've changed the layout again, Jack grumbled. I swear this corridor wasn't here yesterday. The building's semi-sentient, Lexi said, pushing off from the wall. It reconfigures based on who's visiting and the day's agenda. The Ovidians requested respiratory-friendly architecture for today's session, so everything's more bubbly. Jack glanced at the curved surfaces that had replaced yesterday's sharp angles. That's a security nightmare. Former military, Lexi observed with a knowing smirk, always thinking tactically. That's why they assigned you here, you know. The Council doesn't understand humans, and they're terrified of what they don't understand. So they sent someone guaranteed to confuse them further. Precisely. Now come on, I'll show you the delegates' lounge. You should meet some of the friendlier representatives before the session. The lounge, as it turned out, was less a room and more a carefully engineered ecosystem designed to accommodate dozens of different biological needs simultaneously. Desert heat lamps occupied one corner, while another featured a mist-filled dome. A pool of what appeared to be liquid mercury hosted several tentacled diplomats, while anti-gravity platforms supported beings that Jack's mind registered as giant ornate snowflakes. Commander Reynolds chirped an excited voice. Jack turned to see what appeared to be a 7-foot-tall moth person fluttering toward him, iridescent wings creating gentle air currents. I am Dr. Prill of the Leopard Collective. Your species fascinates me. Thanks, Jack said, resisting the urge to comment on how the doctor's antennae were quivering with what seemed like excessive enthusiasm. Dr. Prill is our leading xenobiologist, Lexi explained. She's been studying humanity's evolutionary history. Remarkable adaptation to predatory pressure. Dr. Prill continued, compound eyes gleaming. Most sentient species evolved as prey animals, developing intelligence as a defense mechanism. But humans you co-evolved alongside your predators, developing strange relations with them. Jack exchanged a glance with Lexi. You mean pets? Precisely. Prill's wings fluttered faster. The concept terrifies most council species, taking apex predators into your sleeping chambers. Allowing them access to your young? Fascinating. Before Jack could explain the difference between a house cat and a tiger, a melodious tone echoed through the chamber. Warning. Cultural sensitivity protocol engaged. The building's AI announced. The Forbidden Bestiary exhibit is now opening in Gallery 7. Species with anxiety disorders, please engage calming protocols. The what now? Jack asked. The Forbidden Bestiary, repeated a gravelly voice. Jack turned to find himself face to chest with a hulking reptilian being whose scales shifted between camouflage patterns. A collection of the galaxy's most dangerous organisms, for research and educational purposes. This is Representative Koldrak, Lexi said, from the Saurian Alliance. Your kind would appreciate the exhibit, Koldrak rumbled. Humans have abnormal reactions to danger. Like you, Reynolds. Me? Yesterday's incident with the airlock malfunction. When emergency klaxons sounded, you ran toward danger while all sensible beings sought shelter. The Saurian's vertical pupils narrowed. The Council has noted this behavioral anomaly. Jack remembered the minor emergency, a simple pressure fluctuation he'd helped fix. That's just standard procedure where I'm from. As I said, abnormal. Koldrak's scales rippled into a pattern that the translator helpfully identified as amused discomfort. The tone sounded again, more urgent this time. All delegates to Central Chamber for emergency session, announced the AI. Today's agenda, Dorsian trade dispute, Resolution 459B, and special assessment of human integration progress. Jack's stomach sank. Special assessment? That wasn't on the schedule. Lexi sighed. Welcome to the Council, Jack. The only predictable thing here is unpredictability. As they made their way to the chamber, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that today's session would prove even more challenging than yesterday's mandible-clacking incident. He was right, of course, but not for any reason he could have possibly anticipated. The central chamber of the Galactic Council resembled the world's most elaborate amphitheater, designed by someone with a severe fear of right angles. Hundreds of different seating arrangements accommodated the diverse biological needs of the member species, pools for aquatic delegates, hanging perches for avians, and what appeared to be sentient fog contained in hovering crystal spheres. Jack and Lexi took their seats in the standard gravity, oxygen breather section, noticeably isolated from other delegations. Earth's quarantine status might have been lifted, but the 3-meter safety buffer around their seats told Jack everything about how the Council truly viewed humanity. Before addressing the Dorsian trade dispute, Claxthorne announced, "Crystal body refracting light in complex patterns, we have a special exhibition. The Forbidden Bestiary curator has brought a specimen of particular educational value." A cylindrical containment unit rose from the center of the chamber floor. Inside, obscured by smoky grey force field material, something large moved with predatory grace. "Behold," said a spindly curator whose species Jack couldn't identify, "a juvenile Vortaxian shadow stalker." The force field cleared partially, revealing glimpses of midnight black fur, reflective eye shine, and the suggestion of too many limbs moving with unnatural fluidity. Several delegates immediately engaged personal shield generators. One small gelatinous being appeared to faint, dissolving temporarily into a puddle. "The Shadow Stalker," continued the curator, "apex predator of the Vortaxian nebula. It possesses neurotoxic secretions, phase-shifting capabilities, and empathic fear projection. A perfect hunter that drives prey to panic before consumption." "Is this really necessary?" Lexi muttered. Claxthorne's crystals clinked proudly. "The Council believes understanding dangerous lifeforms promotes safety protocols, especially relevant to our human delegates, who evolved on a planet with similar threats." Jack was about to point out that Earth had nothing remotely like whatever the hell was in that container when three things happened simultaneously. The power flickered, the containment field wavered, and an alarm began to wail. "Containment breach. Containment breach," screamed the Council's AI system. "All delegates evacuate to safety zones." The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates scattered in all directions, some literally taking flight while others oozed, slithered, or teleported toward exits. Jack watched in disbelief as even the supposedly fearsome Saurian representatives fled, scales flashing warning patterns. "Jack, we need to go." Lexi grabbed his arm, but Jack was transfixed by what was happening in the center of the room. The Shadow Stalker had partially materialized outside its containment field. It was simultaneously more and less substantial than Jack had expected, like a panther made of living shadow and negative space, a face with too many joints in its limbs and eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. As it fully phased into reality, Jack felt a wave of primal dread wash over him, the creature's empathic projection at work. "Defensive measures failing," announced the AI. "Predator has disabled automated systems." The Shadow Stalker's head swiveled, taking in the pandemonium it had caused. Its attention locked onto the small cluster of remaining beings, including Jack and Lexi. "Run," whispered Lexi, voice tight with artificial fear. But Jack didn't run. 20 years of military training had taught him that running from predators only triggered pursuit instincts. Instead, he did something that would later be described in Council records as the most incomprehensibly reckless act witnessed in Council chambers in 7 centuries. He walked straight toward the Shadow Stalker. "Jack!" Lexi's horrified cry echoed in the nearly empty chamber. The creature's multiple eyes, Jack counted 7, focused on him with unnerving intensity. It crouched, body tensing for what any reasonable observer would assume was a lethal pounce. Jack stopped 3 meters away, dropped to one knee, and spoke in the calm, measured tone he'd once used to talk down a panicking rookie pilot during a deep space emergency. "Hey there, big guy. Pretty scary situation here. Oh, all these weird aliens freaking out. Bet that's got you spooked." The Shadow Stalker tilted its head, empathic projection faltering momentarily. In the gallery, the few remaining Council members who hadn't managed to evacuate watched in frozen horror. Dr. Prill's wings had stopped mid-flutter. Claxthorne's crystalline structure had gone completely rigid. "Nobody's going to hurt you," Jack continued, slowly extending his hand, palm down, fingers slightly curled. "We just need to get you back home, that's all." The Shadow Stalker made a sound somewhere between a purr and the hum of a malfunctioning FTL drive. It took one step forward, then another. Jack remained perfectly still as the creature, which could apparently kill him in 17 different ways, according to the curator's description, sniffed his outstretched hand. And then, defying every safety protocol in the Council's extensive databases, the shadow stalker pushed its head against Jack's palm. Jack gently scratched behind what appeared to be an ear or possibly a sensory organ that just happened to be in approximately the same location. The creature's purring intensified. Holy shit! Lexi breathed from where she'd frozen near the exit. As containment specialists finally burst into the chamber with advanced weaponry and restraint technology, they were met with an image that would circulate through galactic networks for decades to come. A human calmly stroking the most feared predator in 3 sectors, which was now sprawled on its back like an oversized house cat, multiple limbs splayed in apparent bliss. "Good kitty," Jack said, just as the emergency recording devices captured the historic moment. Unprecedented. Reckless. Potentially catastrophic. Claxthorn's crystal structure vibrated with such intensity that small fragments were flaking off, creating a glittering dust circle around the overseer's pedestal. "Commander Reynolds, do you comprehend the severity of your actions?" Jack sat in what he'd mentally dubbed the naughty chair in the Council's disciplinary chamber. The room was designed to make respondents uncomfortable. The chair's dimensions were slightly wrong for human anatomy. The lighting hit him directly in the eyes, and a subtle high-frequency tone played just at the edge of his hearing range. "I prevented a dangerous situation from escalating," Jack replied evenly. "You interfered with emergency protocols," countered a Maluvian representative, its gas-filled containment suit pulsing with agitation. The shadow stalker would have been neutralized by security forces. "After how many casualties?" Jack asked. "That thing was seconds away from attacking, and your security was nowhere in sight." The door slid open, admitting Commander Taz Blackwood, Earth's military liaison to the Council. Tall, dark-skinned, with close-cropped hair and the bearing of someone who found the entire diplomatic circus exhausting. Blackwood nodded briefly to Jack before addressing the panel. "As requested, I'm here to explain Commander Reynolds' behavior," Blackwood said, standing at parade rest. "Please illuminate us," Claxthorn said frostily. "Perhaps you can explain why your species seems pathologically incapable of following safety procedures." Blackwood's expression remained neutral, but Jack caught the slight tightening around his eyes that suggested he was suppressing an eye roll. "Commander Reynolds acted on instinct developed through human evolution," Blackwood began. "Humans originated as persistence predators who later formed symbiotic relationships with other apex species. What you witnessed was not recklessness, but the application of deeply ingrained species behavior." "You're suggesting humans routinely approach deadly predators?" asked a fungoid counselor, cat changing colors rapidly. "I'm saying we understand predator psychology better than most species because we share aspects of it," Blackwood replied. The shadow stalker was responding to the panic in the room. Commander Reynolds recognized this and countered with calm assertiveness, a technique humans have used with Earth predators for millennia. Jack suppressed a smile. Blackwood was technically correct, though Jack's approach had been based more on his experience with his grandmother's irritable Maine Coon cat than any evolutionary advantage. The council chamber door slid open again, and Dr. Prill fluttered in excitedly, wings creating small eddies of air that disturbed Claxthorn's crystal dust. "Fascinating display," she chirped, compound eyes gleaming. "The human's technique mirrors ancient predator taming rituals documented across 17 species, but none achieved results with such dangerous specimens." "This is not a scientific observation session," Claxthorn chimed irritably. "But it should be," Dr. Prill insisted. "The human demonstrated unprecedented control over a Class 9 predator using non-technological means. The research implications are..." "Dangerous," interrupted a new voice. A tall, thin being composed of interconnected metallic orbs floated into the chamber. Jack recognized Ambassador V. Core of the Mechanoid Collective, one of the Council's most influential members. "The human's behavior illustrates exactly why their species remains under provisional membership status," V. Core continued, the orbs rearranging to express what the translator identified as grave concern. They are unpredictable, disregard established protocols, and now demonstrate disturbing affinity with the galaxy's most dangerous life forms. Jack exchanged glances with Blackwood. This was escalating beyond a simple disciplinary hearing. "Ambassador," Blackwood said carefully, "Commander Reynolds prevented potential casualties. Surely that merits consideration." "It raises questions," Vikor replied. "Troubling questions about humanity's place in galactic society. If humans can bond with apex predators, what does that make humans themselves?" The implication hung in the air. Jack watched as council members shifted uncomfortably. "You think we're dangerous," Jack said, finally understanding. "This isn't about protocol violation. You're afraid of us." The silence that followed was confirmation enough. The council, Clax Thorne eventually said, crystals chiming delicately, has scheduled an emergency threat assessment regarding humanity's continued participation in galactic affairs. The Commander Reynolds incident will be Exhibit A. "You can't be serious," Blackwood protested. "Saving lives warrants expulsion." "The manner in which lives were saved is precisely what concerns us," Vikor replied smoothly. "The assessment will determine whether humans represent a hidden predatory threat to galactic stability." As security escorts arrived to lead them out, Jack caught Dr. Prill's compound gaze. Unlike the others, her antennae were quivering with what appeared to be excitement rather than fear. "Don't worry," she whispered as they passed. "Not everyone sees predator affinity as negative. Some of us find it promising." Jack wasn't sure if that made him feel better or worse. The grand assessment chamber made the previous disciplinary room look cozy by comparison. Tiered seating rows in a perfect circle, accommodating hundreds of representatives from across the galaxy. Jack, Lexi, and Commander Blackwood occupied a small platform in the center, figuratively and literally on trial. "Threat Assessment Protocol 7C is now active," announced a disembodied voice. "The question before the Council: does humanity's behavioral anomalies constitute a Category 1 threat to galactic stability?" Clax Thorne's crystalline form shimmered as the Overseer addressed the Assembly. Evidence Item 1, the Human Predator Incident, in which Commander Jack Reynolds demonstrated aberrant affinity with a Vortaxian shadow stalker. Holographic footage played above their heads, showing Jack's interaction with the creature from multiple angles. From this perspective, Jack had to admit it looked either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. "Humans evolved on a death world," continued Clax Thorne. "Their biology suggests prey characteristics, yet their behavior displays predatory patterns. This duality makes them unpredictable and potentially dangerous." Ambassador Vikor's orbs reconfigured into a speaking formation. "The mechanoid collective proposes humanity be restricted to their own solar system until proper behavioral modifications can be implemented. Their evolutionary psychology is incompatible with galactic standards." Tremors of agreement rippled through the chamber. Jack felt a cold weight settling in his stomach. Earth had barely begun its galactic integration. Being quarantined now would set human development back by centuries. "If I may speak," Lexi said, stepping forward. The Council's AI amplified her voice throughout the chamber. "Diplomat Orion may address the Assembly," Clax Thorne permitted reluctantly. "The Council prides itself on diversity," Lexi began. "Your founding charter celebrates the unique evolutionary paths that lead to sentience. Yet when presented with a species whose path differs from the standard prey model evolution, your response is fear rather than curiosity." "Difference is celebrated within reasonable parameters," Vikor countered. "The human's behavior falls outside those parameters." "According to whose definition?" Lexi challenged. "The Commander Reynolds prevented violence using non-violent means. Isn't that the Council's ultimate goal?" Before Vikor could respond, Dr. Prill fluttered excitedly from her seat, wings creating a small disturbance that had nearby delegates ducking. "A point of scientific clarification," she chirped. "The Council misunderstands human evolutionary status." "Dr. Prill," Clax Thorne chimed with obvious annoyance. "This is an assessment hearing, not a xenobiology lecture." "But the assessment is based on flawed taxonomic assumptions," Dr. Prill insisted. Humans are not aberrant predators, they're evolutionary mediators. The chamber fell silent. Even Jack looked up in surprise. Explain, demanded the fungoid counselor. Dr. Priel's antennae quivered with academic excitement. Most sentient species evolved either as specialized predators or prey, but humans evolved as omnivorous adapters in a multi-predator environment. They survived by understanding both predator and prey psychology. She fluttered down to the central platform, pulling up her own holographic display showing human evolutionary history. Observe. Early humans domesticated wolves, apex predators, converting enemies to allies. They did the same with numerous species, developing empathic bonds across biological categories. This isn't a threat, it's an extraordinary evolutionary gift. A gift that almost caused a catastrophe in council chambers, V-Corps interjected. On the contrary, Dr. Priel countered, it prevented one. Our security analysis indicates the Shadow Stalker would have claimed at least 7 victims before containment. The humans' intervention saved lives using an ability unique to their species. Clack's Thorn's crystals clinked thoughtfully. You suggest humanity's predator affinity could be beneficial? More than beneficial, potentially revolutionary. Dr. Priel's compound eyes gleamed. There are 17 known predatory species the Council cannot effectively communicate with or contain without extreme measures. If humans can establish rapport. Jack saw where this was heading. Wait, you want to use us as some kind of galactic animal control? Dr. Priel fluttered her wings in what the translator identified as enthusiastic affirmation. Commander Blackwood stepped forward. The Council is concerned about humanity's predator affinity, yet now considers exploiting that very trait. V-Corps orbs reconfigured skeptically. A controlled application would differ from random behavioral anomalies. So we're too dangerous to join the galaxy properly, but useful enough to handle your scariest animals? Jack asked incredulously. The Council chamber erupted in overlapping discussions. Jack watched as species that had been ready to quarantine humanity moments ago now debated how best to utilize their evolutionary gift. Clack's Thorn's resonating chime eventually restored order. The Council proposes a compromise. Humanity's threat assessment will be suspended pending a practical demonstration of their mediator abilities. Commander Reynolds will undergo a containment challenge with 3 predatory species under controlled conditions. And if I succeed? Jack asked. Humanity will receive specialized status within Council hierarchy, Clack's Thorn replied, with appropriate privileges and responsibilities, and restrictions, added V-Corps. Jack looked at Lexi and Blackwood. They both gave subtle nods. Fine, Jack said, wondering what he was getting himself into. When do we start? Bit. Immediately, Clack's Thorn chimed, crystals flickering with what might have been anticipation. The specimens are already being prepared. Jack stood in the center of the demonstration arena, acutely aware that hundreds of Council delegates were watching from behind supposedly impenetrable force fields. 3 containment units had been positioned around him, each holding what the Council considered among the most dangerous creatures in charted space. This is ridiculous, he muttered into the communicator where Lexi and Blackwood monitored from a nearby control room. I'm not some galactic dog whisperer. Just do what you did with the Shadow Stalker, Lexi replied. Act naturally. Naturally for a human, Blackwood added. That's the whole point. The first containment field shimmered and retracted, revealing what appeared to be a cross between a manta ray and a cobra, hovering 3 feet off the ground. Its fins undulated hypnotically, while a hooded head swayed back and forth. Abyssal Psyche Serpent, announced the AI, known for telepathic predation and neural toxins. Jack took a deep breath and pushed aside the absurdity of the situation. He focused on the creature's movements, the way its head tracked him, the rhythmic pulsing of its fins. It was agitated but not immediately aggressive. Hey there, he said softly, crouching to appear less threatening. You're pretty far from home, aren't you? The serpent's swaying slowed, its multifaceted eyes narrowing. I bet all these weird aliens make you nervous, Jack continued, slowly extending his hand as he had with the Shadow Stalker. Tell you what, you don't try to melt my brain, and I'll see about getting you a more comfortable setup than that box they had you in." To the astonishment of the watching council, the Psyche serpent gradually lowered itself to the ground, fins relaxing as it extended its sensory filaments toward Jack's hand. "Commander Reynolds demonstrates the first principle of human-predator interaction," Dr. Prill narrated excitedly over the chamber's communication system. "Empathic recognition of the predator's state of mind." The second containment field dropped, revealing a hulking mass of armored plates and barbed appendages, the Krevlak Shredder, a creature whose hunting strategy involved literally tearing apart the molecular bonds of its prey. "Two at once?" Jack protested. "That wasn't the deal." "The Council wishes to test adaptability," Clax Thorne's voice echoed through the arena. Jack quickly assessed the new threat. The Shredder was advancing cautiously, clacking its molecular dissolution pincers. Unlike the Psyche serpent, this creature was all physical threat with limited higher cognition. Drawing on half-remembered nature documentaries and his grandfather's advice about handling aggressive dogs, Jack straightened to his full height, squared his shoulders, and gave a sharp, authoritative command. "Stop." The Shredder froze mid-step, barbed appendages quivering with confusion. "Sit," Jack commanded, gesturing downward with his hand. To the collective gasps of the council observers, the creature slowly lowered its armored bulk to the ground. "The human employs dominance signaling," Dr. Prill narrated, "establishing hierarchical status through confident posturing and vocal commands." Before Jack could properly process this success, the third containment field dropped. This time, nothing visibly emerged, but Jack felt an immediate sense of unease, as if something was watching him from multiple angles simultaneously. "Quantum Phase Hunter," the AI announced, "exists in probabilistic state until prey is selected." "You've got to be kidding me," Jack muttered. "How am I supposed to handle something I can't even see?" "Trust your instincts," came Blackwood's steady voice over the comm. "That's what this whole circus is about, right?" Jack closed his eyes, focusing on the strange prickling sensation across his skin. Earth's evolutionary history had given humans remarkably sensitive predator detection abilities. The feeling of being watched had kept his ancestors alive for millions of years. "I know you're there," he said quietly, "and I know you're confused. All these strange beings, strange smells, strange energies. It's overwhelming, isn't it?" The air shimmered slightly to his left. Jack turned slowly, eyes still closed, tracking the predator by the subtle disturbances it created in the atmosphere. "You don't need to hide," he continued, "and you don't need to hunt. Not here." He extended both hands, palms up, in a universal gesture of offering. "Show yourself, and I promise you'll be treated with respect." For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, like watercolors bleeding across invisible canvas, the Phase Hunter materialized, a creature of shifting geometries and impossible angles that somehow still read as predator to Jack's instincts. "Remarkable." Dr. Prill's excited voice filled the arena. "The human has achieved rapport with all three apex predators simultaneously, a council first." The observation gallery erupted in a cacophony of exclamations in dozens of languages as delegates witnessed something their evolutionary psychology could barely comprehend: being confidently mediating between multiple apex predators without technology or restraints. Hours later, as the demonstration concluded and the creatures were safely returned to improved containment facilities, with Jack's input on their comfort requirements, the council reconvened for their verdict. "The assessment is complete," Clax Thorne announced, crystals gleaming. "Humanity's status within the Galactic Council shall be reclassified as evolutionary mediators with specialized diplomatic privileges regarding dangerous species management." "And the threat assessment?" Lexi pressed. "Cause orbs reconfigured reluctantly, suspended indefinitely. The Mechanoid Collective acknowledges humanity's unique contributions to galactic safety." Jack couldn't help but laugh. "So we went from being too dangerous to join your club to being the galaxy's official monster tamers. That's quite a promotion in one day." "Your species remains perplexing," Clax Thorne admitted, "but Dr. Prill's assessment appears correct. Humans evolved not as predators or prey, but as something in between, a mediating force. As the formal proceedings concluded and the council chamber began to empty, Jack found himself approached by a nervous Praxian diplomat, the same one whose mandibles he defended with his yawn just days earlier. Commander Reynolds, the Praxian buzzed through its translator. My government wishes to inquire if humans might assist with a draconian spine beast infestation on our colony world. We would offer substantial trade concessions. Before Jack could respond, 3 other delegates crowded around with similar requests. Apparently, word of the human advantage was spreading quickly. I think we just became the most popular new species in the galaxy, Lexi observed with amusement. Commander Blackwood shook his head. All because you petted a space monster like a house cat. Jack shrugged, watching as Dr. Prill enthusiastically explained human evolutionary psychology to a cluster of fascinated council scientists. Could be worse, he said. They could have quarantined us. Instead, we get to be the galaxy's pet whisperers. As if to punctuate his statement, a small containment unit was wheeled past, inside which the shadow stalker purred contentedly. There were multiple eyes tracking Jack with what could only be described as affection. Claxthorn's crystals clinked nearby in the council's equivalent of a resigned sigh. The galaxy will never be the same. On that point, at least, everyone could agree.